wealthy man, after making a bet, agrees to marry an overweight woman, but on the wedding day when he sees her, all the guests freeze because she did something no one expected. Mike was the embodiment of success in New York City. At just 38, he had built an empire in the fitness world, owning a chain of elite gyms and a line of sports nutrition products. Mike was a man who lived and breathed physical perfection. His muscular and toned body was the result not only of rigorous workouts but also of iron discipline. For Mike, control was everything, and a person's worth was directly tied to their appearance. He had no tolerance for weakness, and to him, being overweight was the ultimate sign of a lack of discipline. Every time he saw someone carrying extra pounds, he could barely contain a sneer, though he tried to mask it with a polite facade. "People just don't care about themselves," he would often say to his friends with scorn, as if it were an indisputable truth. That night, like many others, Mike was surrounded by his closest friends at a private members-only club they frequented. These friends, also successful businessmen, shared his superficial view of life. Over glasses of expensive wine, they discussed their latest victories, easily drifting from one topic to another. Then, his best friend from college, Alex, threw down a challenge, one that would change Mike's life forever. "Mike," Alex began with a smug grin, "we all know you're unbeatable in business. You've got gorgeous women around you all the time. But what if you had to face a real challenge, something outside your comfort zone?" Mike raised an eyebrow, intrigued, but skeptical. "What do you mean?" he asked, sipping his whiskey. "You know I never turn down a challenge. I always win." Alex looked at him with a mischievous glint in his eye. "Then let's make a bet," he said, lowering his voice to catch everyone's attention. "You marry a woman who doesn't meet your standards, say, someone overweight, and live with her as a husband for 6 months. No divorce, no public drama. If you pull it off, we'll each give you a serious amount of money. There's 6 of us here, so imagine what you'll walk away with." The group burst into laughter, encouraging the idea like it was the best joke of the night. Mike smiled out of habit more than true amusement. Money was never an issue for him. But the idea of marrying someone who didn't belong in his world seemed absurd. Still, the chance to prove once again that he could do absolutely anything was irresistible. "And who's the lucky girl?" Mike asked with mock seriousness. Alex didn't hesitate. "Her name's Emma Thompson. She's a high school literature teacher, 34 years old. She's struggled with her weight most of her life, and let's just say she's not your usual type. She lives a quiet, simple life, nothing like the world you know." Mike leaned back in his chair, evaluating the situation with a smirk. To him, this was just another game, another opportunity to prove his dominance. "I accept," he said at last, triggering another round of applause and laughter from his friends. But Mike had no idea that the decision he made so casually would end up testing not only his control over others, but also his own sense of self. The conversation carried on, and Mike made sure to reinforce his beliefs among his friends. "Listen," he said, "the problem with overweight people is simple. They lack willpower. Anyone can change their body if they want to. Emma's probably tried every diet and workout plan out there and failed because she has no discipline. This will be easy, cold, and calculated." No one in the room doubted it. To them, it was nothing more than a slick joke Mike had taken up. To him, life was a game, and people were pawns to be moved as he saw fit. He had no doubt he would win. As the night came to a close, Mike was already thinking about the next step. The game had begun, and he was confident he'd come out on top, again. Emma, unaware that her life was about to be turned upside down, spent that evening at home. When Alex called her, it came as a complete surprise. They didn't know each other well, just a few exchanges at school functions, since his son attended the school where Emma taught English. "Hi, Emma. How are you?" Alex asked in a friendly tone. "I have a friend who asked me to introduce him to you. He's a successful businessman, and for some reason, you caught his interest." Emma was sitting in her cozy little home, a book in hand, raising her eyebrows in surprise. "Are you sure you mean me?" she replied, her voice laced with disbelief. Why would someone like that want to meet me? Emma had struggled with self-esteem since childhood because of her weight. Failed diets and the inability to keep up a fitness routine had left her with a complicated relationship with her reflection. The idea that someone living the kind of life Alex described could be interested in her seemed absurd. I'm sure, Alex continued, Mike's a great guy, very focused on his career, athletic, but he said he wanted to meet someone different, someone real. Despite her caution, Emma eventually decided to give it a chance. Maybe it'll be a nice change of pace, she thought. That night, Emma stood in front of her closet, trying to choose something to wear for the meeting. Her clothes weren't particularly stylish, and the thought of going to an upscale restaurant made her feel out of place. She chose a simple black dress, not too flashy but enough to give her a bit of confidence. Still, she couldn't help but glance at the mirror with uncertainty. I'm nothing like the women he's probably used to, she thought, trying to quiet the growing doubt inside her. The restaurant Alex had arranged for their meeting was in one of Manhattan's most exclusive neighborhoods. It was the kind of place where soft lighting and low music created an elegant but intimidating atmosphere for Emma. Mike was already seated at a corner table when she walked in. As soon as he saw her, he quickly scanned her appearance. Though his face remained neutral in his mind, the judgment was immediate. Wow, she's really curvy. Well, a bet's a bet, he thought, as he watched her walk uncertainly toward the table. His mind, trained to assess people's fitness levels, noted every detail, but he knew he had to play his role. He needed Emma to trust him, to feel special. Emma, it's a pleasure to meet you, said Mike with a smile that, though fake, seemed genuine. He stood up to greet her with a kiss on the cheek, maintaining the illusion. Emma, still a bit nervous, smiled back. Thank you. It's nice to meet you too, she replied, taking her seat. The waiter came with menus, and Emma felt uneasy reading the names of dishes she had never heard of. Mike quickly ordered and suggested she have the same. The conversation started off light, as expected for a first date. Mike asked about her job, and Emma, slowly relaxing, began to speak with passion about her love for literature and teaching. Her eyes lit up with sincerity as she spoke, and Mike noticed it. Even though he was trying to stay in character as the manipulator, something about how Emma talked about her students and books caught his attention. Still, as she spoke, he couldn't stop comparing her world to his own. Such a simple woman, so far from everything he was used to. Yes, her body was far from his ideal, but that could be fixed, he thought, while she told her stories. Emma felt unexpectedly at ease. Despite how out of place she felt, the attention Mike gave her was something entirely new. She was flattered, completely unaware of what was really going on. But doubt still lingered in her mind. Why would a man like Mike be interested in someone like me? Is he really trying to get to know me? Or is there something else behind this? Meanwhile, Mike decided to steer the conversation toward more personal topics. He told her about his business, how he built his gym empire and became a figure in the fitness world. But with each sentence, Emma began to feel more and more out of place. Although his words were polished, something in the way he spoke about people didn't sit right with her values. At the end of the night, when Mike walked her to her door, Emma thanked him with a shy smile. I didn't know what to expect, she said, nervously fidgeting with her keys, but I had a nice time. I'm glad, Mike replied, maintaining the image of the polite gentleman. I'd like to see you again, if you're okay with that. Emma, uncertain but willing, nodded. Sure, I'd like that. As she walked away, Mike watched her and felt a sudden discomfort. Everything was going according to plan. Emma was slowly falling into his trap. But something in the way she looked at him, with those honest, trusting eyes, was starting to unsettle him more than he cared to admit. He felt guilt. She was too kind, too genuine. In the days that followed, everything went smoothly for Mike. To him, it was all part of a well-orchestrated plan. He knew exactly what he needed to do: get closer to Emma, earn her trust, and most importantly, make her feel special. That would make the bet easier to fulfill and ensure that everything went according to schedule. Just 2 days after their dinner, Mike called Emma again, as if he genuinely couldn't wait to see her. Emma, surprised by how quickly he reached out, accepted his invitation for a walk in the nearby park. She couldn't deny that the attention he was giving her was something she had never experienced before. It flattered her, even if she still couldn't quite understand why a man like him was interested in someone so ordinary. During their walk through the winding trails lined with trees, the peaceful, quiet environment helped Emma open up. And suddenly, almost unintentionally, she began to reveal things she had never spoken about so openly before. "I've always struggled with my weight," Emma said unexpectedly, lowering her eyes to the gravel path beneath their feet. "Since I was a kid, I've always been the big one in the family. I've tried every diet, every workout program, but I always gain the weight back. I always fail." Mike kept listening, nodding in the right places. As a former trainer, he had heard this kind of talk thousands of times. The key now was not to scare her off, just let her talk, let her feel safe. In his head, he had already drawn his conclusions. Exactly what I thought: laziness and no self-discipline. "That must have been really hard for you," he replied in a soft, carefully measured voice, trying to sound compassionate. "But it's not your fault. Sometimes it's a lot more complicated than people think." Emma was surprised by the understanding tone in his voice. She looked at him, her eyes tinged with sadness and a faint smile. "Yeah, it is. It's not just about the weight. It's everything that comes with it. Food has always been a kind of comfort for me. Every time I feel anxious or stressed, I eat, and then I feel guilty, and the cycle just starts all over again." As she spoke, Mike felt conflicting emotions. On one hand, the cold, calculating side of him believed it was just another excuse. But on the other hand, there was something about her vulnerability, her honesty, that stirred something unfamiliar within him. "She's so naive," he thought, trying to push those feelings aside. "But there's something about her honesty I haven't seen before." Over the following weeks, Mike increased the frequency of their meetings. He took Emma out to high-end restaurants, invited her to cultural events, and on walks in Central Park. Every time, he made sure to act as if his interest in her was genuine. To him, it was just strategy. Sustain the illusion. Make Emma relax. Make her believe that he was the man of her dreams. Emma, in turn, began to feel more confident when she was with him. Despite her insecurities about her body, she was touched by how attentive he seemed. Mike listened to every word she said, and even though deep down she still had lingering doubts, they slowly began to fade. Each time he looked at her with those intense, dark eyes, she felt more seen than she ever had before. She trusted him. She hoped he was being honest. A few nights later, Mike met up with his friends again. They gathered at their usual place, a posh private lounge where they discussed business and, more importantly, the bet. With glasses of whiskey in hand and small talk in the background, Mike was completely in his element. Everything was going according to plan, and he was confident in his victory. "So?" Alex asked with a smirk, glancing over at Mike. "How's the game going? You getting close to the finish line?" Mike leaned back in his chair and smiled, raising his glass. "Right on track," he replied, satisfied with his progress. "Emma's all in. She trusts me completely. She thinks I'm the one. You could say the bet is half won already. All that's left is the proposal." His friends burst into laughter and raised their glasses in a toast. "You're the man, Mikey," Alex said, laughing. "All you've got to do now is survive 6 months, and your bank account's going to thank you." "You know money's not the point," Mike replied proudly. "I just never lose." Internally, his confidence only grew stronger. He knew all he had to do now was keep playing the part, keep Emma blind to the truth. The bet was practically won, and he looked forward to savoring his victory. A few days after that meeting, Mike and Emma went out to dinner again, as they had been doing more and more often. Emma had become comfortable, even happy around him. During dinner, in the warm glow of candlelight, she made the decision to open up again, this time even more deeply. "Mike," she said nervously, fiddling with her napkin, "there's something I need to tell you. It's not something I talk about often, but I think you should know." Mike looked at her, pretending to be sincerely interested. In reality, he was already thinking about the next step in the plan. The more she trusted him, the easier it would be to control the situation. "Of course," he said with a smile. "You can tell me anything." Emma looked at him, took a deep breath and said, "I've never been in a relationship before, not a serious one. You're the first person I've ever truly opened up to like this. I never thought I'd find someone who could actually love me." Her words were raw and touching. For the first time, Mike hesitated. The guilt crept in. She wasn't just naive. She was kind, sincere, and completely unsuspecting. But he quickly pushed the emotion aside. He had a goal, a bet to win, and he couldn't let anything derail it. "That doesn't matter," he said softly, taking her hand. "What matters is who you are now, and that we're here, together. You're special." At that moment, a new thought struck him, one that only fueled his confidence. If he became her first love, if she gave herself to him fully, emotionally and physically, she would be his completely. She'd never doubt him. All that remained now was to propose, then wait out the 6 months. It would be the perfect end to the game. Emma looked at him with eyes full of sincerity and hope, and for the first time Mike felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. It wasn't strategy, it wasn't victory, it was guilt, regret, something real. But he shoved it down. He was the master of control, and he wasn't going to let a few feelings ruin his win. Weeks passed, and everything continued to go perfectly for Mike. He maintained a close connection with Emma, and she was falling deeper in love with him. Her eyes sparkled every time she saw him, and she carried herself with growing confidence. One peaceful afternoon, during a walk through the park, Mike decided it was time to take the next step. That day, he was quieter than usual, not because he was unsure about what he was about to do, but because something inside him had begun to stir, a feeling he hadn't yet named. As they reached a bench and sat down to rest, he took a deep breath and spoke. "Emma, I need to ask you something." Emma turned to him surprised. There was something different in his tone, something she couldn't immediately place. Her heart began to beat faster, but she stayed quiet, waiting. Mike, keeping his cool, played the part. "I've been thinking a lot about us," he began, taking her hand, "and I feel like we understand each other really well. I think it's time to take the next step." Emma's heart skipped a beat. His words echoed in her mind like a dream. Never in her life had she imagined a man like Mike would ever say something like this to her. She had always thought that love and marriage were things other people got to experience, not her. Not someone who spent her life feeling like she didn't measure up. But here he was, handsome, successful, confident, asking her something she never expected. "Will you marry me?" Mike asked. His voice was firm, but inside he felt a strange nervousness. Emma stared at him in disbelief, unable to fully process what had just happened. A man she had only recently met was now asking her to be his wife. She had always believed that real love and a happy family were out of reach for her. Her lifelong struggles with body image and confidence made her believe no one would truly love her, especially not a man like Mike. And yet, here he was, holding her hands, asking the most important question of her life. "Are you serious?" she asked, her voice trembling. Mike nodded. "Absolutely. I've never been more sure of anything." "Of course. Yes," she whispered. Tears welled up in her eyes, tears of joy. She couldn't believe this was real. Never had she imagined that this moment would be hers. She had dreamed of it, but dreams never came true for people like her. Until now. Mike saw the raw emotion in her face, and for a fleeting moment felt a stab in his chest, a sharp pain, a pang of something he hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. Was it guilt? He brushed it off. He was a man of success, control. He had a plan, and this was all part of it. The days that followed felt like a fairy tale for Emma. She couldn't stop thinking about the proposal, the upcoming wedding, and the life ahead. She called her friends, shared her joy, and started picturing the kind of life she had only read about in books. For Mike, though, nothing changed. Their relationship had taken an official turn, but to him, it was still part of the game, a performance. He continued seeing his friends, confidently updating them on the progress of the bet. "So you actually did it," Alex said, laughing in disbelief. "Didn't think you'd go through with it. Marrying Emma? Man, you've outdone yourself." Mike felt a strange unease at Alex's words. What once had sounded like praise now carried an uncomfortable weight. The laughs of his friends, which had once meant approval and camaraderie, now rang differently. Still, he pushed down the discomfort. "It's just a matter of time," he replied, keeping his voice steady. 6 months and I'll walk away with 24 grand from each of you. Don't forget who's number one." Alex laughed again. "Sure, just remember, women aren't as simple as you think. This won't be as smooth as you're hoping." Mike forced a smile and changed the subject, but the doubt had been planted. The more time he spent with Emma, the more he realized she wasn't just a pawn in his game. Her sincerity, her vulnerability, and the way she looked at him with such trust, it all started to get to him. But even then, Mike kept moving forward. He had proposed, and Emma had accepted. Everything was going according to plan. Still, with each passing day, it became harder to ignore what was growing inside him. Weeks passed, and preparations for the wedding were in full swing. For Emma, it was the realization of a lifelong dream. She threw herself into planning, shopping for the perfect dress, picking the venue, arranging the menu, and meeting with the wedding coordinator. It all felt surreal and beautiful. She was surrounded by support, joy, and Mike, who seemed genuinely happy about the upcoming ceremony. Meanwhile, Mike continued playing his part. He went to the vendor meetings, tried on tuxedos, smiled for the photos. Every piece of the puzzle was falling into place. And yet, every time Emma looked at him with such open joy and love, he felt more and more pressure inside. One evening, after another meeting with the wedding planner, they returned home. Emma was full of excitement, talking about the decorations and music. "Everything's going to be perfect, don't you think?" she asked, turning to Mike, who seemed slightly distracted. "Yeah, of course," he answered. "It'll be amazing, babe." He watched her gush about the details, her dream wedding, and he realized something painful. He could barely look her in the eyes anymore. Still, Emma remained blissfully unaware of the turmoil building within him. She kept planning, dreaming, and believing that the life she'd longed for was finally coming true. Then the big day arrived. The sun shone brightly over New York, casting a golden glow on the city. Everything was ready. Giant floral arches surrounded the small cathedral where the ceremony would take place. Guests took their seats, chatting excitedly about the couple. Many saw this wedding as a symbol of success. Mike, the accomplished businessman, and Emma, the woman who had seemingly won his heart. It was picture perfect. In the front row sat Mike's friends, including Alex. They exchanged smirks, knowing the truth behind the ceremony. This wasn't a celebration of love. It was the closing act of a bet. Mike stood at the altar in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. On the outside, he looked calm and in control, but inside, a storm was brewing. The past few weeks had shaken him. Could he really go through with it? His pride and the pressure from his friends wouldn't let him back out. Still, something inside him whispered that everything was going terribly wrong. The music began, the doors opened. Emma walked in, glowing in her white dress. Every guest turned to look at her. She walked down the aisle, radiant, confident, filled with love. This was the happiest moment of her life. She reached the altar and took Mike's hand. He smiled at her, but it wasn't a real smile. Emma noticed something in his expression but assumed it was just nerves. The officiant began the ceremony. Everything seemed perfect, but something deep inside Emma stirred. When it came time to exchange vows, Mike spoke first. He took her hands, looked into her eyes, and began reciting the words he had carefully rehearsed, words about love, commitment, and forever. But each word felt like a lie, and with every line something inside him broke a little more. Then it was Emma's turn. She took a deep breath, looked him square in the eyes, and spoke. "Mike," Emma said, her voice firm despite a slight tremble, "I never imagined I'd be standing here in front of you today. When we met, I thought I had found someone who saw me. Not just my appearance, not just my weight, but the real me. I believed you loved me for who I was, that you saw a person, not a list of flaws." Her voice grew stronger with every word, and Mike felt a chill run through his spine. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. The calm confidence he had clung to was slipping fast. "But then," she continued, "I found out the truth." A wave of gasps spread through the church. Emma held his gaze, her eyes no longer soft and uncertain, but fierce, full of pain and fire. "I know everything, Mike. I know about the bet. I know this whole thing. Every date, every word, every touch was part of a game." Silence fell over the crowd. Guests looked at one another in disbelief. Mike's friends in the front row shifted uncomfortably, their smug expressions gone. Mike's face turned pale. He tried to speak, but no words came. "I know you made a bet with your friends that you could marry me," Emma said, her voice now steady and strong, "that you could make me fall for you just to win money, that to you I was never a person. I was just a joke, a cold calculation." The church was dead quiet. Mike stood frozen, humiliated, speechless. Emma let go of his hands and took a step back. "You mocked me," she continued. "You made me believe I mattered, that someone like you could love someone like me. But today, I'm the one who's laughing." She turned to face the crowd. "Now everyone here knows exactly who you are. You're not a success story, Mike. You're a coward, a manipulator, a liar." Then she looked him in the eyes once more. "And here's the real twist," she said, her voice cutting like a blade. "I knew from the beginning. I knew everything. I played along, just like you. But in the end, you lost." Gasps swept through the room again. Everyone sat, stunned, shocked. Emma turned away and walked out of the church, her back straight, her chin high. She didn't look back. Mike stood at the altar alone, his plan shattered into pieces, with every eye in the room fixed on him. His friends said nothing. His pride, his reputation, everything lay in ruins. What had once felt like an easy victory was now the worst loss of his life. Later, as guests began quietly leaving the church, avoiding his eyes, Mike sat by himself in the empty aisle. The bet had backfired. But worse than that, he had lost the only person who had ever seen him as something more than his muscles, his wealth, or his status. And maybe he had started to love her too, without realizing it until it was too late. In the days that followed, Mike couldn't sleep, couldn't think. He replayed every moment, every mistake. He thought about what he had done and about what he had lost. Emma. And he couldn't leave it like that. This wasn't about the bet anymore. It wasn't about winning. It wasn't about proving anything. He needed her back. So the next day, Mike went to Emma's home with a bouquet of red roses. He wanted to apologize, to beg for forgiveness. When Emma opened the door and saw him standing there, she didn't slam it shut. But her face was cold, distant. That gave Mike a sliver of hope. "Emma, please, just hear me out," he said, his voice filled with regret. "I know what I did was unforgivable, but I'm asking, no, I'm begging you to give me a chance, just one chance, to make it right." She listened silently, her face unreadable. "I'll do anything," he said. "I just want to prove to you that I've changed." She took a moment before replying, her voice sharp and calm. "You think flowers and an apology can erase what you did? You used me, lied to me, played with me like I was nothing." Mike swallowed hard but didn't leave. He thought there was still a chance. She hadn't slammed the door. That had to mean something. He kept coming back every day, with gifts, with words, with apologies. He brought her expensive perfumes, jewelry, invitations to luxury dinners, promises of a second chance. But Emma never let him close again. She smiled politely, she nodded, she said, "Thank you." But she never said, "Yes." For her, this was the final act. She wasn't the insecure, uncertain woman he had met months ago. Now she was the one in control. In the months that followed, Emma threw herself into taking care of herself, not to win anyone back, but for herself. She joined a gym. She hired a trainer. She started eating better. She lost over 40 pounds. She found a new style, a new confidence, a new light in her eyes. The next time Mike came to her door, she stepped outside in a fitted dress, glowing with strength and self-love. He stared at her, stunned. "You always said appearance mattered," she said, with a faint smirk. "Well, take a good look." "But you know what?" she added. "You don't matter anymore, you lost me, and I'm not coming back." Mike stood in silence, crushed. He had lost her, not just because of what he'd done, but because he had never truly seen her for who she was, not like someone else had. Because by then, Emma had met someone new. His name was Andrew. He was kind, smart, gentle. A man who saw her, not just the outer shell, not just the before or the after. He saw her soul. He didn't care about her weight, her past, her insecurities. He loved her because of who she was, entirely, genuinely. Their relationship started slow, built on mutual respect, on honesty, on laughter. Emma, for the first time, felt cherished, safe, loved, without conditions. Meanwhile, Mike kept trying. He showed up, he called, he wrote letters, but it was too late. Emma had moved on. He had no one left. The bet was lost. His reputation shattered. His friends had disappeared, embarrassed by the fallout. He stood alone with nothing but the bitter taste of failure and the hollow echo of everything he'd once thought made him strong. And Emma? She kept moving forward, stronger, braver, free. She didn't look back.